You know, when you get old, people start treating you like you're made of glass. Fragile, useless, something to be set aside. But the truth is, I remember everything. Every word, every look, every moment they thought I was too tired to care. I remember the day my daughter called me a burden. It was raining outside, the kind of cold, slow rain that soaks through your bones. I was sitting by the window, knitting quietly, waiting for her to come home from work. I'd made her favorite soup, just like I used to when she was little. I thought she'd be tired, maybe hungry. Maybe she'd smile when she smelled it. But when the door opened, she didn't even look at me. Her hair was wet, her heels clicking on the tiles, her voice sharp. "Mom, I told you not to cook. You'll just mess up the kitchen again." I looked down, my hands trembling a little. "I just wanted to surprise you, sweetheart." She sighed. That deep, heavy sigh that tells you love has turned into obligation. "Mom, you don't have to do anything. Just rest, okay? Rest." That's what they tell old people when they've stopped seeing them as useful. I smiled anyway, even though my chest hurt. I was just trying to help. She didn't answer. She just grabbed her mail and went to her room, the soup untouched. I stared at the door long after she'd closed it. Somewhere in that silence, something inside me cracked. Not loudly, but deep, like glass under pressure. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat there thinking about all the years I'd given her. Every meal, every sacrifice, every night I stayed awake worrying when she was sick, every dream I buried so she could have hers. And now, I was just a burden. You know, people think when you get old your emotions dull, that you stop feeling pain the same way. But let me tell you, my dear, age doesn't numb your heart. It just fills it with memories that hurt more quietly. The next morning I heard her on the phone. I wasn't supposed to, but the door was open. She was talking to her friend. "I love Mom, but honestly, she's becoming a problem. She forgets things, she moves slow, and it's just exhausting." That word again. Exhausting. I wanted to cry. But instead I went back to my room and picked up my old notebook. The one where I'd written letters to her since she was born. Things I'd never said out loud. And right there I started writing a new letter. It began with, "My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone." I didn't know why I wrote it. Maybe it was time to finally tell her what she'd forgotten. Not just who I was, but what I'd done for her. That night, I began making a list of all my small belongings. The jewelry box from my mother, the little house I'd paid off years ago, the savings account she didn't even know existed. Every cent, every memory, every piece of my love. I started putting it in my will. Not to punish her, but to teach her. You see, sometimes life doesn't let us explain ourselves while we're alive. Sometimes we have to let the truth do it for us, after we're gone. Before I continue, let me ask you something, sweetheart. If your own child ever made you feel unwanted, what would you do? Would you stay quiet? Or would you make sure they finally understood your worth, even if it was too late? If you've ever felt like someone forgot your value, tell me in the comments below. I want to hear your story too. Anyway, back to that night. After I wrote the first few pages of my will, I sat by the window again. The rain had stopped, but the world outside looked just as gray. I could see my reflection in the glass. Wrinkles deep, eyes tired, but something fierce still alive inside me. That's when I decided. I wouldn't beg to be seen anymore. If my daughter couldn't see my worth while I was alive, then maybe she'd learn it after I was gone. The next morning I went to the small bank downtown. I hadn't been there in years. The clerk looked surprised to see me walking in with my cane and a determined look. I told him I wanted to make some arrangements. He helped me set up a private safety box, just for my will and my letters. I sealed the envelope, kissed it, and whispered, "Someday she'll read this. And maybe then, she'll remember who I really was." When I got home, she barely noticed I was gone. She was too busy on her laptop, typing something for work. I stood there for a moment just watching her. My daughter, all grown up, successful, busy, everything I ever wanted her to be. Except kind. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to tell her that no matter what she said, I still loved her. But instead I walked past her quietly, back to my room. Later that evening she knocked on my door. "Mom, I'm sorry if I sounded harsh earlier. I've just been stressed." I smiled weakly. "It's okay, sweetheart. I understand." But deep inside something had already changed. Sometimes love doesn't end with anger, it ends with silence. And that silence was the beginning of everything that followed. Because what she didn't know was that my will held a secret, something that would not just change how she saw me, but how she saw herself. I always believed that silence could fix things. That if you stop arguing, stop explaining, stop fighting to be understood, people will notice you're quiet and finally start listening. But I was wrong. Silence doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just becomes a wall between hearts. After that night, my daughter and I stopped talking as much. She'd leave early, come home late. I'd stay in my room, pretending to sleep when I heard her footsteps. Sometimes she'd peek in just to check if I'd eaten, but we never sat together anymore. And every time I saw her phone light up with work messages, I'd remember when her whole world used to be me. Back when she was little, she couldn't sleep unless I told her a bedtime story. She'd hold my hand and whisper, "Mommy, don't ever leave me, okay?" But now, it felt like she'd already left me a long time ago. One morning I woke up feeling weak. My chest was heavy, my hands shaking. I thought maybe it was just my age catching up, but something inside told me it was more than that. I didn't want to worry her, so I said nothing. I made myself tea, sat by the window, and just breathed in the soft sunlight. But my breath felt shorter than before. Later that day, I went to see our old family doctor. He smiled kindly. He'd known me since my husband was alive. But the way his eyes softened as he read the reports, I already knew what he was about to say. "Your heart is weak, Mrs. Clark," he said gently. "You'll need rest. And please try not to stress too much." I laughed a little. "Oh, doctor, I stopped worrying a long time ago." But deep down, I knew my time was beginning to slip away. That evening I came home quietly. My daughter was in the kitchen, heating something in the microwave. The smell of ready-made pasta filled the air. She didn't notice me at first. When she did, she said, "Oh, Mom, you scared me." "Where were you?" "Just out for a walk," I lied. "You should have told me," she said, glancing at her phone again. "It's dangerous for you to go alone." I wanted to tell her the truth, that the danger wasn't outside, it was inside my chest, but I couldn't. So I just smiled. "I'll be careful." That night I took out the will again. My hands trembled as I opened the letter I'd written to her. I added a few more lines. "By the time you read this, my darling girl, you'll understand that everything I did, every sacrifice, every silence, every tear, was never to make you feel guilty, but to help you see love for what it really is. Not money, not comfort, but care." I sealed the letter again, my tears falling on the paper. Sometimes I wonder if she'll ever know how much I loved her. Truly know. The next day she came home looking tired again. Her tone softer this time. "Mom, did you eat?" "Yes, I did," I said. "Okay, good." She hesitated. Then she walked closer and sat down beside me, something she hadn't done in weeks. I didn't mean what I said before. About you being a burden." I looked up at her. Her eyes were red, tired but honest. "Then why did you say it?" I asked quietly. She looked away. "Because I was angry. I'm struggling to keep up with everything, and sometimes it's easier to blame someone." That moment, I didn't feel anger. Felt pity. For her. For the life that had made her forget the softness she was born with. I reached out and took her hand. "You're not the same little girl who used to bring me flowers from the yard," I whispered. "But that little girl, she's still inside you somewhere. Don't let the world take her away completely." She didn't answer. But her hand squeezed mine. That night, after she went to bed, I sat by the window again. I could hear the clock ticking, slow, steady, cruel. And for the first time I started preparing not just for my death, but for her life after me. I gathered my jewelry, my letters, my savings, the house papers, everything. I placed them in one box with a label. For my daughter, to remind her what love looks like. I even added one thing she'd never seen before. An envelope from my late husband, her father. It had been locked away for decades. Inside was a note he'd written before he died in that car crash. If you're reading this, my love, remember. Our daughter will one day forget what love looks like. When that happens, remind her with kindness, not anger. When I read his words again after all these years, cried. 'Cause he was right. Before I drifted to sleep, I whispered into the dark. I'll remind her, darling. Even if it's with my last breath. You know, when you're near the end of your road, things become clear. You start seeing not what you lost but what you still have. I didn't have time. But I still had love. And that was enough. You know, it's strange how the body gives you warnings before the soul says goodbye. Some mornings I'd wake up dizzy. Other days, I couldn't even button my blouse without my fingers trembling. I'd hide it. I didn't want her to see how weak I'd become. A mother's instinct never dies, even when her body does. But she noticed. She started coming home earlier. Making soup again, not the best kind, but it tasted like forgiveness. She'd say things like, "Mom, maybe we should go to the park this weekend." And I'd smile, even though I knew the weekend would never come. One night I heard her in her room crying softly. She thought I was asleep. Her voice was muffled, but I could hear enough. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom." My heart cracked open right there. Because the truth was, she was about to find out. I remember sitting on my bed, holding the little wooden box that held my will. My handwriting wasn't neat anymore, but I'd written every word with love. There was one letter inside, the one I'd written for her years ago, the day she called me a burden. It wasn't meant to hurt her. It was meant to save her. But sometimes, saving someone means breaking them a little first. That next morning, I told her I wanted to visit the old house, the one her father built before he passed. She hesitated at first, saying she was too busy, but when she saw how serious I was, she agreed. The drive was quiet. The sky was gray, like it knew what was coming. When we reached the house, dust covered everything. Memories clung to the air like perfume. "This place feels smaller," she said softly. "No," I replied. "You just grew bigger." We walked through each room. The old clock still ticked faintly, even though it hadn't been wound in years. I sat in the same chair your grandfather used to read his newspaper in, and she stood by the window, her face pale. Then she said something I never thought I'd hear again. "Mom, I'm sorry." My heart stilled. "For what, sweetheart?" "For everything. For being so cold. For forgetting who you were to me. You've given me everything and I treated you like a problem." I wanted to hold her. To tell her it was all right. But my chest tightened, and before I could speak, the world tilted. Fell. Her scream echoed through the house, breaking the still air. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Machines beeped softly. Her hand was gripping mine so tightly I could barely move my fingers. Tears streaked her face. "Mom, don't you dare leave me," she whispered. "I'm not ready." I smiled faintly. "We're never ready, darling. But you'll be okay. You're stronger than you think." She shook her head. "No, I'm not." "You are," I whispered, brushing her hair back weakly. "You always were." That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and thought of everything I'd lost. My husband, my youth, my health, and everything I'd gained even through pain. Love had come full circle. The nurse came in at dawn and said I needed rest. I nodded, but in my heart, I knew I was resting forever soon. Before closing my eyes, I asked the nurse to do one thing. "When the time comes, give her the box on my bedside table." The nurse looked at me with sad eyes and nodded. When I woke again, it was daylight. My daughter was asleep beside my bed, her hand still holding mine. I wanted to wake her, to tell her I loved her one last time. But my voice wouldn't come. So I did what I always did, I smiled. And then, "Let go." Grandma's voice softens as she looks at the camera. Eyes teary but peaceful. I didn't see light or angels, just peace. A piece I'd been searching for years. I left behind a letter. The one I wrote with every piece of love still left in me. My dear daughter, if you're reading this, it means my voice has faded, but my love hasn't. I know you didn't mean those words. You were tired, lost, afraid. We all are sometimes. I forgave you long before you ever said sorry. But now, it's your turn to forgive yourself. The next day she found that box. And when she opened it, she discovered not just my will, but the truth about everything I'd been hiding. Because love always leaves one final surprise. The rain was falling the day she opened the box. She told me later she almost couldn't do it. She said it felt like opening my grave all over again. Inside she found my pearls, the locket her father gave me on our wedding day, a few faded photos, and that envelope marked in my shaky handwriting. For my daughter. She said she sat on the floor, hands shaking, heart pounding, staring at her name for 10 whole minutes before she dared to open it. And when she finally did, she found my will. It began simply, "To my dearest daughter, the only piece of my heart that still beats in this world." Then she read the words that I had written in pain, in forgiveness, in love. Everything I own is yours. The house, the savings, the jewelry. But there's something greater I'm leaving behind. The truth about why I lived the way I did. She turned the page. There she found an old hospital document. Yellowed, folded, forgotten. Her eyes widened when she saw the date. 1989. And beneath it, the name of a little boy. Her brother. A brother she never knew she had. I had written every detail. How your father and I lost him at birth. How I'd kept his memory alive by helping other children in secret all those years, donating what little I had to orphanages in his name. Every child I helped, I wrote, was my way of loving the son I never got to hold. And every sacrifice I made for you was my way of loving you twice. For both of us. She said she dropped the papers, covering her mouth, whispering, "Oh my God. Mom, why didn't you tell me? 'Cause how could I? How could I tell her that every night when she was small and I tucked her in, I saw his face beside hers? That every birthday candle she blew out, I silently wished for him too. I wanted her childhood to be light, not shadowed by my grief." She found more letters, one for every year since her father died. I'd written them, sealed them, kept them all these decades. Each one told her how proud I was, even when she failed, even when she pushed me away. And at the very end of my will, there was a short final note, written in trembling ink. "My darling girl, you once called me a burden. But you were wrong. You were my reason to keep breathing. The day you read this, promise me one thing. Don't carry guilt. Carry kindness. Because that's the only inheritance that never runs out." She told me she cried for hours. She held that letter to her chest and whispered, "I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry." Then she did something I never expected. She sold half the things I left her, not for herself, but to reopen the old children's shelter I once donated to. She named it Grace's Home. Every week she visits, reads stories to the children, laughs with them the way I once laughed with her. And on the wall near the entrance, there's a small framed picture, me holding her as a baby, smiling. Underneath it, she wrote a quote from my letter. "Carry kindness." Grandma's voice trembles. She looks straight into the camera. "You see, my darlings, we all leave something behind. It isn't money. It isn't houses or gold. It's the feeling we give to those we love. When people remember you, let them remember warmth. Let them remember that you tried. And if your mother or father is still alive, don't wait to say you're sorry. Don't wait until the room is filled with silence, and the only voice left is the one inside your heart. Because one day, you'll open a letter you never expected, and you'll realize that love was never gone. It was just waiting for you to see it. Thank you for listening, sweetheart. Maybe you'll call your mom after this. Maybe. That's all I ever wanted.